Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Falcione, the editor of HopNews.com, and we are very fortunate this evening to have two candidates for the planning board with us. One is an incumbent, Ken Weismantel, and the other is his challenger, Muriel Kramer. And so we see them here. I'd like to know about each one of you, if ladies first, if you don't mind.
I do not mind.
All
So my
right.
name is Muriel Kramer, and I have lived in town with my husband since 1991. It's a lot of years now. It kind of piles up. We have 6 children that we've happily raised in this beautiful town. Our youngest will be a junior in high school next year, and everybody else will be out of the house. Very quiet house now. I have my interest in town government actually was sparked about 10 or 12 years ago when I was looking for part-time employment when my kids were a little bit little but a little bit big. And I started writing for various news agencies in town, and covering the planning board actually was my first beat, and got very interested in the workings of the planning board. I have subsequently served on the Board of Appeals. I served as the chairman of the Master Plan Update Committee, the previous one to this new edition. I have served as a selectman, and I have most currently served as the deputy town moderator and a commissioner of trust funds. I really do enjoy this town, and I really have found that I love giving back to Hopkinton in this way.
And you're still in the capacity of Commissioner of Trust Funds. Are you also running for that again?
I am actually, yes, I am on the
Oh,
ballot
double
for
dipping
that.
at Live on Maine, huh?
Live on Maine.
I'm just kidding.
Here's the scoop.
Go on. That's
So I don't know what else you want me to tell you about. I have been for the last 3 years a little bit sidetracked in a very wonderful way, pursuing my master's at Boston College in social work. I just sent my last paper yesterday, ironically, on healthcare and healthcare policy, but we'll leave that discussion for another time. I'll graduate. I'll graduate. No, I'll do it. I'll do it. We'll go. I graduate May 22nd, so I'm super excited about that. And my goal is to work with marginalized populations, hopefully in the criminal justice system. So that's the work I hope to be doing.
excellent.
Thank
Good
you.
for you.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
hope you have time. If you got time, who used to say that all the time on the planning board? I mean, on the Board of Selectmen, was it Mary?
I don't know.
Mary Pratt would say, "Do you have the time to do the job?"
Oh yes, when she was interviewing people.
Yeah, right.
Sure,
right.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I miss Mary. We don't see her much anymore.
Yeah.
Ken, you've got a list of accomplishments to be proud of, also.
Yeah, I moved to Hopkinton in 1981, which makes me a long-term resident at this point. We raised 3 daughters. We now have 4 grandchildren. And we've been at 145 Ash Street for that long time.
I think everybody knows that. 39 North.
39 North.
Okay, then this is a result of their frequent trips to the microphone at town meeting, where they have to state their name and address. And I think Ken Weismantel was the first name I had heard at the first town meeting that I attended. So that's why we know their addresses.
So anyway, I've been elected twice to the planning board. I was elected twice to the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners. I was elected to the DPW board and elected to the Cemetery Commission. I've served on probably about 10 different appointed boards. I'm on 2 appointed boards from Governor Baker. One is the Water Resources Commission, which implements the clean water policy in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Instead of talking about what boards I was on, I'd like to talk about some accomplishments. We have a new master plan with the implementation plan and a vision statement that's in there. We do annual zoning updates at Planning Board. We just got through that this last week, and the Planning Board was successful on 100% of what we proposed. During my career, I've gotten about 750 acres designated as open space, both a couple hundred acres when I was water commissioner, and then also with Legacy Farms, and then all the other open space subdivisions. Legacy Farms is revenue positive, which means lower taxes. We've got a underwrite on the ballot coming up on the 15th. So when you come vote for me, you can also vote for the underwrite and save about $1.5 million. I've been testifying, and we are on the short list, and we're getting high on the list for the downtown corridor. I testified for the town the last couple of sessions at the MPO. Sidewalk program was in cooperation with DPW and the planning board. The cemetery fence across from the common was kind of one of my projects. I did a lot of work, volunteer work on the train station for the restoration of that as a carpenter. I love to do woodworking as a hobby. The town sewer system, my first meeting on the sewer system, we signed the contract for phase 2, and I was involved in phase 2 through 6. Phase 4 and 5, I ended up getting a 0% loan grant from the state, which saved people thousands of dollars. When I was water commissioner, we discovered the 2 well sites that are 2 of our best. One is the Aprilla Farm site, and then the new one that's on the Fruit Street property. And then the other thing from an accounting standpoint, we set up the Water and Sewer Enterprise Funds. So those are some of my accomplishments on some of the committees that I was on.
What do you do in your spare time? My goodness. Muriel, what do you see for the future of Hopkins in the long-term future? If I may state, the downtown corridor is starting to gel with a plan in place and the gift of land. I understood from my last week's conversation with John that Cross Point is giving some land to the town that will satisfy the needs of the state in regards to straightening the intersection. So that's I know a lot of that's coming together because I've heard a lot of complaints about traffic and so on, and hopefully, I hope it'll it'll move it. But what do you see? Do you see any needs to change anything?
Needs to change anything. I think that for a long time, so just speaking to the intersection and the traffic management, if in fact that's helpful, it's wonderful news that we're moving forward. I do know that I have experienced a better experience at the traffic light since it's been sequenced.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be really difficult. I do know that we're also trying to calm traffic in another way, so I have questions about that, not opposition, just questions about calming it in one spot and making it more efficient in another spot. Although certainly at the intersection, I would celebrate increased safety, and I think that we actually have a good system now working. I think that what I'm hearing as I knock on doors and I talk to people is the pressure of the growth that we're experiencing. And people have an increased interest in understanding that growth is being welcomed and at the same time managed. And that the needs of the residents and the concerns of the residents are prominently considered in all processes. So I would like to, my vision for my work on the planning board is really to bring together what I see are the 3 main constituencies when we're discussing planning issues. That would be the professional staff who provide us with the information that we need to know from a legal, traffic, planning, professional standpoint. The rights and the desires of the developer, and the needs of the developer as well, and then also the residents, and contemplating in particular the master plan, but also addressing the needs of people as they come forward, making sure that everybody is fairly heard, and that as much as possible we take input from all constituencies and develop sort of that magic mix of idea that is the best for everybody involved. And I think that I have established a commitment and an ability in that area. I really do prize engagement across the board. One of the efforts that I worked on with the selectmen was also the legacy farms, and that was actually because of the urgency of the time. We developed a process that was really kind of spectacular, where all the boards and committees and constituencies were part of that study committee. I recognize that growth is a little difficult as it's happening for people to embrace, and it's changed over time a little bit. I think that is to be expected, but the primary parameters of that development were maintained. There's a significant amount of open space saved, preserved, and it is revenue positive, which was a primary focus and a primary driver of that whole collaborative conversation.
Have you seen what the new ones are going to look like? Because Reed Blue is I think he's a product specialist with Pulte. He said they're going to be offering a different product.
I have
on the
not
north
seen
side.
that.
I haven't either.
I have not seen
Yeah,
that.
well, we've approved the whole north side except for the over 55 age restricted units. And yes, we have all the designs. That was done a couple of months ago, or actually last summer. They've started construction on those. I'd like to echo what Muriel said about Legacy Farms being a planned community. It's kind of a Hopkinton's smart growth community without having the train station in the middle of it. But it was designed as open space and very dense. Not everyone's cup of tea, but quite frankly, the people that are buying in there are spending a lot more than we had contemplated 10 years ago. So it is so revenue positive. It's almost twice as revenue positive than what we expected 10 years ago. Each unit is $100,000 to $150,000 more per unit in the sales, and you can just see your Bob's Hop News thing that $500,000
Popping.
duplexes kind of going along, and those were much lower in our revenue estimates. The best part about the growth well, first of all, the growth in Hopkinton is in two areas. One is the Muse apartment complex that's just starting to be finished, and then Legacy Farms. And if you look at what we project, the planning board projects for growth, it's about 1,500 homes in this decade. It sounds like that's dwellings. It sounds like an awful lot, but only 343 are projected to be single-family houses. The most Legacy Farms is the most of it. That's very revenue positive. The Muse apartments will probably be slightly negative on that, but that was a 40B that we couldn't plan for as a town. So basically, you've got 343, which is about 34 single-family houses a year, which is very low for Hopkinton standards. We were in the 150 range in the 1990s. So the growth is there at Legacy Farms, and it's also this decade at the Muse. We've also had about 50% growth in our commercial business, and this is talking about the shops and the shopping areas. In fact, Hopkinton is actually the third best in the 495 suburban edge communities, where the Wegmans Plaza beats us out, obviously, in Northborough, and the Littleton Market Basket Plaza beats us out, but we've experienced 50% growth in the last 10 years, and that's partly because the planning board has been trying to attract growth, make sure that people understand that you can get through our permitting process. We changed peer review engineers and told them to work with the people to solve all the problems, but to get it done. And people have responded to that, and we have had some new stuff. I mean, the 110 Grill and that whole plaza has been really great with the spoon, etc. And it's fully occupied, so it's we've seen some good, exciting things. The new store downtown. I'm hoping they get the front rented. It'd be nice to have a nice restaurant there very soon. We've seen a lot of new buildings, and I'm very happy about where we have on the commercial growth. I didn't expect it to be quite that much, but when I saw the facts and figures that came out of this state study commission that I'm on, I was kind of surprised to see Hopkinton was third in that category.
Muriel, regarding growth, what are you looking? Is there anything you would change? And the reason I ask that, because there were a lot of people saying that the town's grown too quickly. We have to stop and slow it down. And can you slow it, or can you just guide it?
It's really about managing it, and I think there is a response to the Legacy Farms that is natural, because it was such a big bump of dense growth that is different. and again the Muse that is by the Lumber Street. It's not about stopping it. So everybody understands that growth happens, and everybody understands actually that growth is good. It is about encouraging people, and we've talked about this for as long as I've lived in town, which is 25 years, a little more. Trying to, vitalize, or we call it revitalizing downtown, but we still want to attract more small, eclectic, interesting, unique businesses. We want people in Hopkinton to stay here, and we also want people from other towns to come here. And a continued focus on attracting people to the downtown and to our commercial areas is really important. The flip side is that there's a little struggle as we bump into areas where there are residential dwellings, and we have to be really mindful of pursuing and supporting and inviting attractive growth, particularly commercial growth, and also respecting the needs of the residents that live in the area. And that's an ongoing conversation each and every time something comes up. It's not oppositional, it's integrative, it's collaborative, it's bringing everybody into it together, and perhaps developing a mechanism to communicate when big developments are on the fore, and really spend some time communicating to people what to expect, particularly I think in the construction phase, until things also settle back into the more normative and normal state. But no, it's not about being oppositional. I worked really hard as a selectman to invite businesses and to support businesses as they were trying to expand in this area. One of the things I think of is looking forward for the next 10 years, understanding the changing dynamic. There are still broad sections of our industrial and commercial section that we haven't filled, and I know people have been working at that, so it's not a criticism, but looking forward, that's a big thing to try and put energy into, continuing to put energy into, to bring people to those sectors. Not expanding, excuse me,
Bless you.
necessarily encroaching into firmly residential areas, but maximizing the use of the areas that are set aside already for industrial and commercial uses.
Well, now it's not commercial. May I ask a question? No, did you want to respond?
Let me respond on the growth a little bit.
Okay.
Hopkinton's not that much different than what I saw when we moved here in 1981. Our values are the same. Population's about double, but basically Hopkinton has a unique set of characteristics that makes it why we want to come to Hopkinton. Let's say how we've managed growth or how we reacted to it. Let's see, our high school is now third in the Commonwealth. So geez, we're probably doing pretty good on the school side. Let's see, our police and fire, we're right up there as one of the safest cities in the Commonwealth. I think we're doing pretty well in that area. Financial, our bonds are at very high rate, and we're giving back $1.5 million of the levy limit as an underwrite. So financially, we're in great shape. Traffic, yeah, we're lagging a little bit on that, but we have the plan. We have the traffic calming on Hayden Road that town meeting passed. We're within the next 2 years of actually putting shovels in the ground for the Main Street area. That's taken us about 7 or 8 years on the waiting list, and we've solved the problem with the land takings. The 25% design review is coming up very shortly. There's some challenges with the plan, particularly parking downtown, but we've really been able to manage and live with the growth. In fact, I think we're doing a significantly better job this decade than in the 90s. And actually in the 90s, the growth rate was significantly higher than what we're experiencing in this decade. And then it was all big 4-bedroom houses with a gazillion kids coming in. There's only 168 kids.
Hey.
No, don't take that personally.
Hey.
That wasn't meant pejorative. I think that we've all benefited from your children.
Yeah, but I mean, there's only 168 kids in all the units have been built on Legacy. And you know, they're well on the projections that we did 10 years because we limited the bedroom count back then. So you know, that's how we managed it back there. We set in place some different ways. We made a few changes to the plan. We allowed simplexes instead of just row houses. Those are worth a lot more money than even the duplexes. So we added value to the project in the time period. So, you know, instead of having units that have 0 feet between each unit, we now have 20 feet between each unit. For a person that doesn't live in Legacy Farms, that's not my cup of tea. But there are many people, many great people that are coming into town in Legacy Farms, and they're buying these units. And it's really good to see where it's at. I mean, like I said, we got great schools, we got great public safety, and we've got great finances in the town. And when you have great finances, you can solve the problems. We didn't even have to debt exclude the school. We could have used $1.5 million to buy the bond in the levy limit. I mean, we go outside the levy limit for a lot of these projects, but we really don't have to do that.
Now, what about this this thing that's going to join Chamberlain and Whalen Roads? Chamberlain Street, Whalen Roads, the 34 units, I believe, from Paul Mastriani.
I think it'll be less than 34. Because
Well, I think the question I have is because there's all this uproar about it from, especially I think Chamberlain Street. Well, Whalen Road that's a scene out of the 60s, kind of early 70s. You know, those homes.
Hey, they're both great neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And what I see is, first of all, you got to make sure you don't wish for, or you got to worry about what you're going to get, not what you wish for. We have a two-step process. One is the open space landscape development subdivision, of which that I envision an extension of each cul-de-sac with a 12-foot emergency access that's gated between the two cul-de-sacs.
Okay, so you're not in favor of a straight-through road?
No,
is that what I'm hearing?
No.
Okay.
No, I've never been in favor of that.
Well, I've never heard that either, but I don't think the neighborhood's heard that from you either.
Well,
I think they need to hear
They
that.
did hear it from the developer though
They
too
did?
at the first meeting. He
Okay.
did say that it's not really what he wants to do either. He's initiating the process in the way the process is laid out to
Right.
be initiated.
And you know, we couldn't go with the alternates before he submitted his baseline proposal.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So basically that's kind of the process. Now, be careful what you wish for. If we turn down this open space concept, then he can submit the conventional plan that he's got in his pocket, which gives him bigger lots. But for the town standpoint, the trails go away, the open space, which is 50%, goes away, and he gets a through road because that's the only way we can zone it that way. If the planning board at that point turned down the conventional one, quite frankly, he would win it after a year or two in court. So you got to be careful what you wish for on those two streets.
I don't want to say too much about a project that's coming before the planning board and hasn't been heard fully and decided. But it's a great example of the ways that everybody in the process can be brought into the conversation constructively and a little more thoughtfully. I don't believe any developer, Paul Mastriani included, wants to come in and just disrupt what is already there. Certainly the neighbors don't want something that is just disruptive. There is a happy middle ground that it's the planning board's job to find. I have a tendency to look at it a little bit more proactively and a little less, what I heard was kind of defensively. I don't feel
Where'd you hear that?
like what Mr. Weismantel was just saying, and it's my perception, is that I'm not worried about the worst case happening. I really see the possibilities. The neighbors are very engaged. The developer is very engaged. There are plenty of professionals and rules and regulations to sort of be protective on the macro level broadly and to help guide the process. But I do think that there is a way for Mr. Mastriani to develop his property in a way that is also respectful of the neighbors on either side in those two little neighborhoods.
He's not?
No, he will. He will. I'm sure he will. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, I thought you were saying in opposition
No, there's
to...
a way to do it.
Yeah.
Certainly, that brings in the voices, the needs, the priorities of all constituencies.
Did anyone not speak at that last meeting? It looked like everyone that wanted to speak spoke.
Oh, as far as I know,
You
people
were there.
spoke. Yeah, people
Yeah.
spoke. Yeah,
No,
as far as I
okay.
know, people
No,
spoke.
the planning board is the most transparent board in town. We have public hearings. It's not a hearing in public, but a true public hearing. And it's not like the board of selectmen or the school committee where, they will kind of do their hearing in public and then they won't take any comment from that. Our agendas are published in advance. You can click on the link and you can see every piece of material that we have received for the hearing process is there available to anyone to go see it. And our minutes are very good. Kobe puts together great sets of minutes. And
Kobe's a rock star.
And-
We all agree on that.
and so we have great minutes. We write our decisions fairly quickly. We discuss the decisions and all the points in public, and then we come to a consensus. One of the things I did when I took over as chairman of the planning board is we now have an outline portion. That makes the meeting a lot more efficient. If we're going to talk about traffic, we talk to traffic, we get everyone's input, we go around the board. If everyone's happy with it, do we have a consensus on what we're going to do? If it's a site plan review, if it's lighting, whatever, we talk about it, go through it. It's not like when I first joined the board, you skipped all over the place. Well, this focuses the attention, make sure that the developer has his experts there. If we need the peer review, they're always there, engineers. So basically, the planning board, like I said, is a very transparent board. And, we listen to everyone, and projects get better because of that, because of what the members add to it, and we get through it. But there is a set of legal stuff that you got to follow at the end of the day, or
Repercussions.
the developer has rights, and you have the right to develop your property within the rules and regulations that exist. And sometimes you got to be careful with what you wish for. There was where the Dunkin' Donuts was going to be. There was going to be a nice little bank, with really nice hours, and one of the person who owned the property scared the bank off, and unfortunately they got Dunkin' Donuts came in and bought the property. So I mean, you really got to be careful what you wish for, and I worry about that on this. It was about 4 months ago, or whenever Paul first came in for a preliminary meeting. I said, this is not going to go well with a through road. Develop a concept that basically extend the cul-de-sac with emergency access. And emergency access is very important because that allows us to meet our cul-de-sac rule. We limit the number of cul-de-sacs unless it's in an open space plan. And we don't allow more than 10 units on a cul-de-sac, and because we don't prefer those, both from emergency access, and also there are lots of lots. If you want to really open up growth in town, break the cul-de-sac rule, and anyone with 5 to 10 acres that are scattered around, you're going to have cul-de-sac after cul-de-sac going up and down Hayden Road.
Some great projects have come about during the last few years. Some people may not know, there's a lot of people that are new to town, that Legacy Farms, for instance, is its own zoning. It's its own little world, as if it were another entity. Because that zoning, when you talk about simplexes, they don't have to be more than 25 feet apart.
Yeah, no, right, exactly.
20
it's a very
feet.
different,
20 feet now?
different
20
kind
feet,
of
yeah.
different kind of zoning.
It's
Right.
it's kind of our answer to smart growth, but we preserve 500 acres of open space around it, and we've got a lot of great trails. Legacy Farms has been kind of part of my project for the time. I ended up chairing the zoning advisory committee when we wrote the overlay district. And that was a once a week job on TV every week, and we muddled through it, and it's a fairly large zoning overlay, and it passed I think it was 6-1 at that town meeting. So
Wow.
I do
it did
think
really
that was
well.
a really big effort, honestly, and it was definitely an innovation for the town. And people who put that kind of time into years and years of lots of time onto that project and all the projects and all the ways that people volunteer their time is to be commended. It doesn't necessarily always boil down to dollars and cents, although the focus on revenue positive versus just simply revenue neutral is important to maintain. And I do think that it is, I want to say a point about transparency. I don't have an opinion on the planning board being more transparent than other boards. I think that the boards and committees in town do a very nice job. One of the things that Ken mentioned, that a lot of the boards receive comment and don't interact with it. And I wish there was more of that interaction. And I do think that sometimes people also want more interaction in that back and forth collaborative way with the planning board as well. So it's not just hearing people, but it's making people understand that they have been heard and that their comments are being taken into account, and their priorities and their needs are being put before the developer so that there can be work in the middle. And that's what I hope to further on the planning board, is to make sure that we really are getting sort of the best possible development for all constituency groups, so that
Okay.
people can be as happy as possible.
Can I throw this out?
You can throw anything out. It's your
Yeah.
show, yeah?
Oh, this show, I have my guitar right here.
Yeah.
Speaking of, it's my show. Is the volume up enough on that, Eric? I'm not seeing a lot of volume from the other two speakers. Oh, okay, good. Then people are hearing it, like, you can see what's going out.
Oh,
Or what
Okay.
has gone out like 30 seconds ago.
Okay.
But how many more homes can be built in this town? What's the peak population? What's like 17,000 now? 25,000? 30,000?
Well, when we reached our 40B 10%,
Mm-hmm.
and we're now projected to be over 11% at the end of the decade, and they count this every 10 years with the census. So we are 2020, we're in great shape. We might even be okay for 2030 with some of the things that we've done with inclusionary housing. Once you got to that level, we have much more local control over our zoning. We have no threat of 40B, we just tell them to go away at this point. Immediately after that, not this year, but last year's town meeting, we basically put the garden apartment complexes on hold. Part of it, we were building pretty close to 900 units over at Legacy of what we'd call garden apartments or condominiums. So we kind of said, well, 10 years ago we didn't have that many, now we got more than enough. So we put that on hold. Well, that takes a whole bunch of stuff, property off the market, because it could be developed under the condo rules, but it doesn't meet a road in and a road out.
Well, but what is it? What is the population going to be? Anybody? I mean, it's got to be a limit.
an upper limit, yeah.
I think the
Glass ceiling, so to
I
speak.
guess the best way to describe that is you're going to see in the next decade, other than legacy farms, you're going to see a very big slowdown in the number of single-family homes being built. And you see that already this decade, where we're only averaging 34 a year. In a couple of those years, we had the Great Recession. There was probably less than that. We're catching up a little bit of that from the
I
Great
do
Recession.
think that people appreciate, though, that that growth is slowing, and I think that is also causing. And I interrupted you, Ken. I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to. I was trying to join you in the conversation. The pressure increases, right, as available places and available options and available situations. The pressure increases, and I think that responding to that pressure on the planning board is going to become even more and more important. Bringing people into the process so we work through the solutions together, so we understand really what the town wants as we start to hit our. I hear a lot of people saying, where else can they build? And of course, there's always someplace else you can build. But I get that people feel that way. People feel the pressure of the schools. They appreciate that we have great schools, but they feel the pressure of having to build new schools. There's always a tension, and as we reach
The pressure on the schools, though. I mean, we built Marathon School originally just to replace same number of students as Center School. We added 4 more classrooms at the last special town meeting, but basically there was a big study, and up until the last November, we were losing students or projected to lose it. And that's what the professionals were saying. And
I got beat up on the campaign trail for saying that very thing, but yes, it is true.
And so there's a myth that we're just bursting at the seams at the schools and everything else.
So
no, we want better schools. We
pressure of taxes, though, Ken. I'm sorry, I wasn't talking pressure of numbers necessarily. I was talking pressure of taxes in new schools. But go ahead.
But we've got $1.5 million underride. This is the second underride we've had this decade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've got a great professional team in town. The professionals managing it. We've got a great professional volunteer team running a lot of the boards. And I go back to what is the results? The results are it's number 3 high school in the state. The school committee must be doing something right. And, we heard a great report at town meeting from the school superintendent. I mean, we've got safe streets. We've added to our first responders, the fire and the police, in the last couple of years. They have good facilities. We added a ladder truck because we think we needed one. We've addressed it. The best thing that we do is with this extra money, we can solve the problems. I would like to see a little bit more put into the recreational facilities. I think we've kind of lagged on some of the recreational facilities. Parks and Rec has got the new land off of Legacy Farms that potentially they could build in. We accepted a parcel right next to the school's athletic parcel that was given to the town after the planning board approved 3 lots off of Leonard Street. That's a great place to build a couple of fields. It connects to the center trail. It's right adjacent to all the parking and everything else that's at the middle school and the fields. I mean, we have a lot of facilities. I think the people in Hopkinton have high standards, want excellent whatever it is. They want excellent schools. They'd like excellent parks. I mean, look what we did to Sandy Beach. Just beautiful facilities.
Is that wonderful? Oh,
Parks and Rec gets a lot of credit for doing a great job over there.
Absolutely. That is really beautiful. I know, because when I lived in the neighborhood, it was so beautiful. Not because I lived in the neighborhood.
Somebody said yesterday when I was out on the knocking on doors that they thought that Sandy Beach was like the single best accomplishment. It was really wonderful feedback for the folks on Parks and Rec. People were thrilled, and they said when they no longer live over there. When they lived over there, they could hear kids playing early in the morning, all hours, weather, and so.
Well, let me tell you a couple of my Sandy Beach stories. When we put the sewer in around the lake, which did a lot to preserve the water quality of the lake, the contractor used the Sandy Beach parking lot to store all the boulders that he was blasting out of that area. Well, with Parks and Rec, and a nod from the conservation, we built at no cost to the town, a rock wall on the south part that stopped Sandy Beach erosion. We also then took a lot of the fill. There used to be a big hole where all the swing sets are, and we dumped fill into that area. With the boat ramp, what was a bunch of concrete blocks that used to kind of demark the parking lot back there. I had the contractor one Saturday morning build a boat ramp out of them. I mean, not really well planned and whatever or engineered, but we kind of muddled out a boat ramp on that. We put the water and sewer out to the island so that it's a little bit better. And then when I was on CPC, we funded the Sandy Beach project, so I was really happy. I like ribbon cuttings, and Sandy Beach ribbon cutting to me was a really fun night.
That was quite costly, wasn't it?
I think it's
to do that. I mean, I'm not saying it's not worth it, because it's definitely worth it. So it's an awesome.
For a small storage area and 2 bathrooms, I think it's a lot per square foot. But it is what it was, and the engineers put it together, and took them a year to kind of do what I would have thought could have been constructed in, just
Less than that
a
time,
lot.
huh?
Yeah, we could have stick built the thing or bricked it or whatever, and it would have been done a lot quicker than buying a prefab and hauling it in.
Well, it's a gem, and I think more parts of the town need gems too.
Yeah.
So in your spare time, you
Could do a little bit more.
yeah, maybe.
Well, I mean, the train station is I think, another one of our gems, and
It
I
is.
really enjoyed. I put, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand hours worth of work into that, I think.
It's gorgeous. It is absolutely. Did you use like beadboard inside?
Yeah,
Was it beadboard?
we
Yeah.
had beadboard inside. Some of it's original. One room's original, and we had to
Wow.
have the other beadboard planed with a special mill just so we could replicate it. I mean, I did it with a lot of others, Mark Gates and Ron Yankee. Ron spent as many hours that I did, and then much more because he was painting. I hate to paint, so
That was an Eagle Scout project, I think, at its heart, right?
It started off,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not
So,
not so
kudos
much.
to the Scouts.
Yeah.
No, it definitely. But I remember that Scout going through the process and working it really hard.
Yep.
I remember Michelle Gates working
Michelle
with
was there every day.
She
for a
dragged
while.
Mark into
Yeah.
it, and her father too. I worked along with her father until we got it kind of up. But the before and after pictures there's not as much original left into it. But
That was
it looks
stored
good.
somewhere since they took it down.
Right,
wasn't
it was stored over at the Mezit's barn, and it got stored flat for 2 or 3 years, and we lost a lot of wood in
that's
that
too
process.
bad.
And but it is what it is, and it turned out okay at the end. And it was
yeah,
fun
so
working with
gorgeous.
the historic. I know when my youngest daughter got married, we actually had some wedding pictures taken on the
great.
front deck of it, which
Yeah.
I thought was kind of
That's
fun.
beautiful.
That's awesome. It kind of. I wasn't quite in favor of the project of moving it there in the first place because I used to take the high school seniors there. And
Personal interest. It was a spot for you.
that was just it.
Yeah,
That was all
yeah.
all like.
It is a beautiful little spot.
Yeah, but now the lights change because you can't pose the kids the same way. So I don't go there anymore. It just, but it is so gorgeous. So it's now also personal that I can go down there and buy some Hopkinton things and drop some bottles and cans off and so forth. So it's still a great, really great project that you all were involved in. So what do you think? Anything else? Did we miss anything?
Did we miss anything? I just want to encourage people to get out to vote,
Yeah.
right? On May 15th.
Yeah.
We're really lucky this year to have a vibrant pool of candidates, and I certainly hope you'll vote for me, obviously. But you know what I hear most on the campaign trail, and you must as well? How many seats are open on the planning
Yeah,
board?
it's
There's like a
confusing,
million
isn't it?
people.
Yeah.
It is a little confusing, and probably it helps to let people know that there's a 3-year unexpired term, and that is not opposed, and there's a 1-year unexpired term that has 2 people running for it, and then there are the 2 5-year seats with 4 people
4 of
running.
us
Yeah,
running,
right.
so there's a lot of activity out there,
Sure is.
and the town benefits from that. So I really appreciate all the candidates and all the action. Out
I would
there.
appreciate people voting for me, re-electing me to the planning board. I think all the time and effort that I put in, I've earned your vote. At least I hope I've earned your vote. And come vote early and often, as they used to say in my hometown near Chicago.
I might
Well-
just vote once. I might just vote once.
I'd like to thank my friends for stopping by this evening and spending their valuable time as the election progresses and the campaign heats up. And also would like to announce that we're having a new Town Talk, a new version of Town Talk we're developing right now. Eric is inviting the people who have signed up for our alert page, the Hop News alert page. So this one you'll be able to chit chat with other people in a really sensible and reasonable and respectful way. We hope it's going to be a private page. Oh wow! Look, there it is. Join the group. In private, in the sense that we don't want any hit and runs. Just let's all just be civil and have a chit chat. So I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. Thank my friends very much.
Thank you, Bob.
For spending time.
Thanks, Bob.
and,
Good luck, Ken.
Good luck.
And letting me know. Thanks. Good night, all.
Good night.
And